We should now be recording. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully you can see my slides. I also put the presentation, the PDF, into the chat. We'll go ahead and get started. This is I've lost track, but we are the Thursday after every board meeting. We are kind of diving a little bit deeper into goals and guardrails. I think we started in August, so however many months that's been. We are now talking about Goal 3, post-graduation preparedness, and I will walk through some of that, and some other members of APS are here to share. For those who are new or just watching for the first time, this helps us build awareness about our progress towards goals and guardrails, also helps share ideas among us on what is working, what is not working, questions, and kind of takes it to a broader level rather than just what's happening in the board room. We also know that particularly with this board meeting on Monday, the power was out and it moved to virtual, and so it could have moved with people's schedules, and so we appreciate people's patience with that. So as a quick reminder, our goals and guardrails are 4 goals around literacy, numeracy, post-graduation preparedness, and then college and career readiness. And then we have guardrails, which are kind of the boundaries through which we achieve our goals. So we have equity, stakeholder engagement, culture and climate, and innovation and accountability. And we've touched most of these. I know we've done literacy, numeracy, equity, stakeholder engagement, culture, and climate. And so this will be our first time with the community going into post-graduation preparedness, which is heavily focused on our profile of a graduate. And so with that, I'll talk about the profile of a graduate at a high level, and then maybe pass it to Monique to go through the data, if that's all right. And we can always tag team if needed. So the profile of a graduate definitions, we've got 6 of them. And basically this started in the strategic plan back in 2020, and it kind of lived there as this high level, oh, here are the things we want all students to have. It was part of our strategic plan development, and kind of just stopped there. About a year or so ago, maybe a little more, we started diving deeper into what does that actually look like. We met with internal and external stakeholders, students, teachers, to really get to what does that actually mean. And on each of the subsequent slides, you'll see those high-level definitions on what does it actually mean to be self-directed. One of the challenging parts of that is that's also great, but then how do you measure it, right? It's easier to measure some of these academic measures to what does academically prepared look like, but what does an engaged learner look like, and how do you measure it? How do you measure a student, whether they're resourceful or not? And with that, you'll see, I don't know, 1,000 measures that we've identified to capture it. I don't think that's the exact number, but Monique, I'm sure knows, but it's about 5 or 6 measures for each one of these 6 characteristics, which is a lot. And it's a combination of measures, process measures, outcome measures, quantitative versus qualitative measures, and so subjective. So we will at some point have a conversation. What we heard from the board on Monday night was we really need to review these measures themselves and talk about what it actually looks like. And the goals and guardrails process allows us that opportunity to look at those measures. And so we'd love feedback even throughout today while you hear about them on, do these even make sense? Is there something missing? Is there something we should dive deeper into or take off? We'd love some of that feedback also as we go. And so with that, I should also say one of the next steps on the profile of a graduate is we have these definitions that you'll see on each slide at the basically walking across the stage level. And our next step is to then cascade it. One step is to review the measures. The other step is to cascade it to what does it look like for middle school and what does it look like for elementary school? What does an elementary student who is a critical thinker look like? So that's kind of one of our next steps as well. And so with that, I'll pass it to Dr. O'Brien to maybe walk us through some of these measures and what we can see.
Thank you, Travis. Good afternoon, everyone. So super excited to kind of talk to you guys about our profile of a graduate. This is really us taking our vision into reality to try to measure our 6 components. So as you can see here on this slide, our first area of a profile of a graduate is self-directed and goal-oriented. As Travis said earlier, when we first started on this journey, we took the 6 profile of a graduate components that live in our strategic plan, and we started with defining what does it mean to be self-directed and goal-oriented. And so you can see from the bullets on the left side that as a team, cross-functional team, we said that a student is self-directed and goal-oriented if they are motivated, accomplishing ambitious goals to learn new skills and gain new information, builds resilience by learning from failures, adapting to change, and persevering, and balances intellectual, physical, and emotional aspects of life. So, from that, we decided as a team, well, what data already exists? We did not want to add additional work to students' plates. It was really imperative that we looked at what we were already doing to see if we had some measures that would align with this particular component. And so, as you can see on the right side, we looked at fall post-graduation plans. We looked to see if students felt confident in their ability to accomplish goals based on the senior exit survey. We looked to see if students, again, identified that they were prepared to identify strengths and weaknesses. And then we also looked at whether students had completed pathways as well as passed the end of pathway assessment. And so, as you can see here, for our class of 2023, so those are our 12th grade students that graduated last year in May, that 90% of our students had post-graduation plans. That was up 6.4% from last year, our class of 2022 students. 61.6% of our students felt confident in their ability to accomplish goals. 77.6% of our students said that they were prepared to identify strengths and weaknesses, which was down 1.4 percentage points from last year. We are still awaiting the state release of our pathway completer data, as well as our end of pathway assessment data for the class of 2023. But again, once that data is available, we will update that and be able to present that to everyone. And then if we take just these 3 scores, we end up with an average score of 76.4 percentage points. That is up 13 percentage points from last year. But again, I will say that that number, the difference of the 13.9%, is slightly misleading just because we don't have the pathway completer and end of pathway assessment data. So again, we will make some changes as soon as that information is available.
Awesome.
Next.
And if you're gonna pause also for some logistics stuff, feel free to put in questions as we go, because that's a lot of information. And maybe I'll do a kind of quick pause after each one of these if anyone has any questions on these topics. And I'll start with one question and one comment. One question is, when do the seniors take the senior exit survey? Is there a week time frame? What does that look like?
Yep, absolutely. So our senior exit survey is administered through our partnership with College Advising Corps, as well as Achieve Atlanta. That survey typically goes out in late August, and we have it available for students to complete through the month of May. And again, this is for our seniors. A lot of the questions on there are about their graduation plans so that we know how to support students over the summertime as they begin to matriculate into college, or if they need support with military or career planning.
Awesome, thanks. And then the next is a comment for the second half of our presentation today. We're going to focus on pathway completion and career pathways. And Dr. Freeman is here because we get a lot of questions leading up to this about career pathways, and in some recent board community meetings about, hey, what schools have what? And so we thought today would be a good opportunity to dive a little deeper into just one aspect of this profile of a graduate.
Perfect. So then our second component of the profile of a graduate is self-reflective and globally connected. And so again, you can see that the way that we are currently defining that is that a student holds deep understanding of their own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior, is self-reflective, understanding personal strengths, opportunities for growth, learning needs, and alignment of decisions with their personal values, finds, evaluates, and uses information responsibly to be an engaged citizen who advocates for just causes, values civic responsibility, democracy in multiple party systems, democracy, I'm sorry about that, and maintains open-mindedness to others, including those from backgrounds, cultures, and contexts different from their own, shows caring, compassion, and respect towards others, has a positive social and cultural identity, including a sense of agency, self-confidence, and self-awareness. So from all of that, so again, that was a very involved definition. We tried to cover as much as possible. But from that, you can see that we have 6 areas that we're using to measure this. We have whether a student is prepared to understand events in other countries. This is based on whether a student, the senior ESIC survey, so there is a question that we ask students around this. Whether or not students have completed community service credit. We also look at whether students are enrolled in passing grades in world language, in particular that they earn 2 world language course credits. We look to see if students are enrolled in passing grades in social studies, as well as their openness towards different opinions and perspectives, which is a question that is on the Georgia Student Health Survey, as well as the last part, fair treatment of other students, which again is another question that is on the Georgia Student Health Survey. From here, you can see that based on our class of 2023 students compared to 2022, in the areas of prepared to understand events in other countries, as well as completion of community service credits. Both of those areas did see a decrease, while our other 4 areas, enrollment in passing grades in world language, as well as social studies, and students' perspectives on their openness towards different opinions and fair treatment of other students saw increases. Overall, we had an average score of 79.3% in this area, which is down 5.1 percentage points from 2022.
Awesome. Thanks, Monique. Ms. Howe, I see your hand raised. You have a question or comment on this one?
Yes, I wanted to know, do this apply or how does this look for students with disability? I think this is an overall question for as when you look at a graduate and particularly the kids with disability, do all of these things is still set for them, or is it different because it'll be different for their specific disabilities, I would say?
That is a great question. And so when we looked at data for this particular area, we included all students. So we looked at all students that were enrolled in 12th grade last year to look at their data. And so we did look when we look at like world language credits or social studies, we looked at all of our students' transcripts, regardless of what level of social studies courses that a student may have been involved in.
Do you know, Monique, to follow up on Ms. Howe's point, which is probably also, can we see the data of the breakdown of the different subgroups would probably be one of the follow-ups that you may ask. But does the senior exit survey and or the Georgia Student Health Survey, are you able to disaggregate the data by special education student? Is it tied to a student number or is it just general?
That's a great question. So for the Georgia Student Health Survey, that is very general. All of our students receive a link, and it's not tied to their student number. Now, there are some questions that the state of Georgia asks regarding their demographics, such as what grade level they're in. So that's how we're able to pull the 12th grade students. And it asks demographic information such as gender and race and ethnicity. But unfortunately, on that survey, it does not ask students, are they receiving special ed services? So it would be a little bit difficult for us to be able to identify which students are receiving special education services to be able to track their perception data.
So okay, so it's not necessarily data for them. So this is my concern. I do have a 12th grade graduating this year, but my concern, I have friends, family, niece, and nephew with the students with disabilities, and how we look at them graduating out. Have y'all had a conversation, or will this be for the special education department? And I can talk to them later. But is there a conversation about how that would look for children with disabilities? Because what I have found, my brother graduated last year, and where I feel he could have had a little bit more time in school, they said he met all the requirements and he graduated out. He's a semi-productive citizen right now, he do have a job, but I think he could be doing so much more and so much greater had he had more access while he was, going through his high school experience. And so I'm wondering, as we set the tone, all is great. I know we always have to say all, but we do have those subgroups that we know may be struggling. And I know me and other parents have talked about them having a pathway to go to the college and career school so that they can earn credit. And while they're there, making sure that they have their resources or their support so that they can understand and receive the information. So if they want to be a carpenter or go into nursing, you know what I'm saying? Depending on what they have going on individually, they still have that access and they're not just graduate now and going and work at Kroger, but they truly have access to having a livable life once they exit out of high school.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Howell. And that's probably beyond data. And so if anyone else would like to share feedback, I think she also put a little mini plug in there for tonight at 5:30. There's a parent cafe
Yes.
specifically on special education with Dr. Battle. So thanks for kind of reminding people on that one. I don't know if either Dr. Freeman with Pathways in special education or if somebody else has any just general feedback to Ms. Howell's recommendations or thoughts.
I think that's a perfect point. Mentioned for special ed and those pathways that are at the Atlanta College and Career Academy. None of the pathways, unless it's explicitly stated in a student's IEP that, certain components like NIDS and culinary, like specific cases, right? But outside of that, there is no need to exclude any special ed students from those pathways. And we find quite often that some are perfectly designed for different accommodations that students may have. And so we are grateful to have specifically at ACCA a team of not only special ed paras, but also ESOL support as well to support the subgroups that are able to come through the pathways. And that same thing applies at our traditional programs at the schools as well.
So it is there. They actually have that there.
What's that now?
They have someone there that can help students with disabilities if they choose to go to. Okay.
Absolutely.
And is the families and the school coordinator, are they aware of that?
At ACCA?
At the high school? At the high school, at the other high school, you know how like.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Mr. Williams-Akeem, do you have a question on this topic or can we go back to the next one?
It was the last one. Yeah, the self-reflective and globally connected.
Okay, yes, sir.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So my question was around the subgroups. I just want to know if this data is being compared to the CCRPI data that we get from the state. And have you all noticed any trends or any trends like as far as how the students are performing? I understand that the average score went down 5% from 2022 to 2023, but is there like any trend from the two data sets?
That's a great question. Did you want to jump in, Mr. Austin? I'm sorry.
So right now the CCRPI is embargoed, so we're not at liberty to make comparisons on a data set that's currently embargoed. But the data is very different, and the business rules are very different. There might be some parallels on some data points, on a few, but CCRPI, most of it works on students who are what they call full academic year. Only those students are counted for many of those measures, where some of the measures that we use for our student outcomes focused governance measures are on all students, regardless of how long they've been with us. So there might be a few granular points that we might be able to make some comparisons to. But right now, we have not looked at any of those trends because that data, like I said, is embargoed. Just recently, districts are able to see their data. The public release for CCRPI is not scheduled until December 14th. But that is a great point, and possibly maybe we will be able to see some parallels going forward. And if Dr. O'Brien would like to add anything to that.
No, I think you summed that up very well. Thank you, Mr. Austin.
Okay. And my part two of that question would be real fast, Travis.
You know,
The world language. I understand that we're tracking the credits that people are getting, but are we also tracking the exposure that students are receiving while they're in high school, as far as like going out the country or going to different states to actually use these skills hand to hand?
That's a very great point. I love that. That is something that we haven't considered yet, but definitely something that I can bring back to the team for us to explore maybe in future iterations.
Yes, ma'am.
and I think you'll see, Dr. Bryan, maybe I'm wrong, is one of them, you know, the world language diploma or some of those. I think we tried to fit some world language in there, but not the exposure or opportunities piece.
Yep, absolutely. So our third category is fully engaged learners. And so again, similar as you can see with the patterns on these, on the left side, we define using 3 bullets what a fully engaged learner is. On the right side, you can see the 6 components that we looked at for our data. And so this is a combination of data from the Georgia Student Health Survey, as well as our senior exit survey, and then just our students' attendance records. So from here, you can see that 84.1% of our students, 12th grade students last year, identified that they felt successful at school, which was up 1.3 percentage points from the class of 2022. 79.2% of the class of 2023 identified that they feel that they fit in school, up 2.3 percentage points from 2022. 61.7% of our 12th grade students had said that they look forward to school, which is up 1.9 percentage points from the class of 2022. Students for regular attendance. This is an area as a district that we can grow in. For our cohort 2023 students, 50.9% of our students were present for at least 90% of APS classes in grades 9 through 12. So that's across their full high school career with us, which was down 7.7 percentage points when we compare class of 23 to class of 22. And then 81.9% of our students identified that they feel prepared to become successful, as well as 77.8% of our students feel that they're connected to others at school, which gave us an average score in this area of fully engaged learners of 72.6%. This is up 1 percentage point when we compare the class of 2023 to class of 2022.
Awesome. Thanks, Monique. And feel free to, if you have questions, put them in the chat or raise your hand. I think this is a good example of that mixture of data, right? So, and how it can tell a story. So when I see it today, I looked at it a little different with pretty high scores on feeling successful at school, prepared to become successful. Then it starts getting a little lower at fitting in and then connecting, and then lower at looking forward to coming to school. And then you see the result on that outcome measure of actually showing up to school on attendance. And so an example of kind of painting the picture of our students. So if no hands are raised, we'll jump to the next one on academically prepared. Oh, sorry, Ms. Schropp.
I think I came in a bit late, but I think I want to piggyback off Ms. Howell comment about the students with disability. And the reason why I'm stressing that is because you compared the 2023, is that right, to 2022, and you're talking about feeling successful. Well, what I can tell you is that as it relates to exiting out of high school, those children don't get the same process for creating or attending to a council. I know it's said, but it's not it's not trickling down to to schools. So those students don't get the opportunity to tell you whether or not they're prepared, and we know that they don't get the same counseling sessions as regular students. So your numbers are going to be, to me, are going to be a little bit skewed as it relates to your capturing, because those students are not, they're not counted in these numbers. I can tell you that.
Okay, and Dr. O'Brien, correct me if I'm wrong. So they are included in the respondents. Well, they may be included in the respondents of them, but particularly for the questions on the Georgia Student Health Survey, we can't disaggregate special education students out of that total number. And same, but we can with the senior exit survey, correct?
You're absolutely right. You're correct. And part of that is because the Georgia Student Health Survey is, again, something that's administered by the state where we have less flexibility. And the senior exit survey is something that's more in-house, that we have the opportunity to be able to look at that.
And that's what I was speaking of, the senior exit survey, because I know that they have a person that's assigned that will come back and ask you the question, at least to the student with a disability, but then those numbers are captured after you done that report. So I'm just hoping that we can get ahead of that and probably at least include them in your numbers so we can be better prepared.
And I appreciate you lifting that point. We can definitely be more mindful as we collect that data this year. And I can also go back and look at not only the 2023 data and 2022 data to look to see which students may possibly be missing. So I definitely appreciate you flagging that for us so that we can do better as we collect data this spring.
So, Akeem?
Yes. Hey guys, I just got a general question. Is this data, has this data been collected for like the last 5 years, and do we have like a 5-year trend on this? Okay. I won't ask that question. Can you go back to the fully engaged learners for a hot second? Okay. I just wanted to know, like, are we also on the survey, like, I understand fully engaged learners, but are we also asking the questions about like counselor involvement, principal involvement, how well are the leaders connected to the students? Because sometimes that affects that attending school regularly, that attendance rate, and fitting into the school, and also like looking forward to going to school. If you have an administrator that's constantly suspending the student, of course they're not going to feel that welcoming vibe into the school. So are we like comparing that data set as well, or is that not something that we would compare for this?
Yeah, unfortunately, the questions on the Georgia Student Health Survey are the state provides the
No
survey
worries.
to us, so we have a little less flexibility. We have not explored that with the senior exit survey, but that is something that I can bring back to the team to kind of think about as we think about what future versions of that survey may look like.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, a good point on kind of how we could do better. I'm not sure if that's part of the senior exit survey, but for you to score this higher, what could we do? I did want to call out in a couple on the resourceful and driven is where Dr. O'Brien mentioned some of the Georgia Student Health Survey related to adults. So they do ask, I know an adult at school that I can talk to
Okay.
if I need help, but it's not specific to my counselor, my principal, my teacher. All right.
I got you.
Dr. O'Brien?
Perfect. So then while we're here, resourceful and driven. So again, left side, you can kind of see how as a district, we're defining a student that's resourceful and driven. On the, oh, oops, am I on the wrong one? Sorry, academically prepared. I'm ahead of myself. On the left side, you can see how we're defining academically prepared. And on the right side, you can see the 6 areas that we're using to measure that. So one of those is on-time graduation, which we define as students graduating within 4 years. And so for the class of 2023, we had 86.6% of our students graduate within 4 years, which was up 2.6 percentage points from 2022. We also look at the students' proficiency level. Are the students scoring proficient or distinguished on at least one Georgia Milestones end of course of assessment? And so there are 4 assessments in high school. Students are tested in Algebra 1, They're tested on biology, American literature, which is usually taken in 11th grade, and then they're also tested in U.S. history. So again, we're looking at what percentage of our high school students were proficient on at least one of those assessments. And so for class of 2023, 36.6% of our students scored proficient or distinguished on at least one assessment, which was down 10.4 percentage points when we compare class of 23 to 22. The next piece that you can see are students enrolling in at least 4 English language arts courses and earning credit, which is at 88.2%. You can also see we have 88.2% of our students enrolling in at least 4 mathematics courses and passing. And both of those are up for class of 2023 compared to 2022. The next area we have is college ready on the SAT or ACT. And so again, we're looking at the percentage of students who met the college and career readiness benchmarks for the SAT, which is scoring at least a 530 in English and a 480 in mathematics, or reaching what ACT considers college readiness, which is a grade of 22 or higher. And so for class of 2023, 23.6% of our students met the college and career readiness benchmark on either of those assessments, or one of those assessments, I should say. And then the last piece is enrolled in college. We do not have this information yet from the National Student Clearinghouse. It's a little bit lagging because the National Student Clearinghouse looks at whether or not a student was enrolled by October 1st, right after graduation. And so we are in the process now of just getting that data, but we'll be able to share that information sometime this spring. And so again, overall, there was an average score of 64.6%, which was up 1.2 percentage points from last year.
Akeem?
Hi, yes. So looking at this subgroup, it concerns me a little bit because I look at the milestones proficiency and then also look at SAT, ACT scores. So basically it's telling us that we're not preparing students like to complete nationally amongst their peers, but the kids are passing their ELA courses and their math courses.
One could see that from looking at that. That is a fair observation. Other things to keep in mind is that the standards that are being tested may be slightly different when we think about SAT and ACT, and then what the purposes of those assessments are slightly different than the state assessment, and then even when we think about some of the standards that are taught in the class. Mr. Austin, would you like to jump in as well?
Yes, and so the vast majority of the courses in our high schools do not have a state test associated with them. So we need to keep that in mind, that tested subjects are very much in the minority. But your point is well taken, because you want to look for those parallels, but the majority of courses are non-tested. So that's just something to keep in mind. But also, SAT and ACT are not aligned to our standards. ACT has their own, and SAT is again a very different test with a different purpose than our criterion test. So,
Sure. So my follow-up to that would be, if we're for the last year, the city of Atlanta have been pushing the push for the year of the youth. And when I think of the youth, I think of graduate in Atlanta public schools, the seniors in particular, who are trying to get into the workforce and careers. However, by looking at the subset, it's almost like, okay, we're passing the students along, but we know that they're not nationally ready to compete amongst their peers. And I'm also interested in knowing for the subgroups for the ELA and math, if our students aren't prepared to, I understand that we're not going to get overnight results. This problem's been here for forever. But with the literacy, this just speaks to our point. We're graduating students who are not ready for the next steps. And how do we slow that down? How do we better prepare our students to want to, like, no child goes to school every day and say, hey, I don't want to read, I don't want to learn. However, once we continue the cycle of not providing the proper resources for the student, then we get into issues post-graduation. So I guess my question here would be, do we know how many of the seniors, well, I think it says it here, 64, we had 6,450 students. Is this what the subgroup is
Correct.
for the seniors of last year or for the last 2 years?
It's just 1 year.
Okay. And so if we have 6,450 seniors, and of that 80,
I'm sorry, no, that's the student course records. I apologize. That's the number of courses that they had in total. So it's roughly around 2,000 something seniors.
okay. So with the 2,000 seniors, and so do we know, like, well, we don't know how many are enrolled in college, but do we know how many went to like the armed services or started career?
Not really. So it's a little bit difficult for us to collect the armed services data other than students just letting us know that they are interested in going in that pathway based on their graduation plans. But it is a little bit hard for us to verify whether that's where they went, because we currently don't do like a follow-up survey with them.
Okay, and I want to know more about the 21st century skills, like the critical thinking, the collaboration, and creation. Um, how do we know that that is aligning with the state standards and the national standards?
That's a really good question. I'd definitely love to punt that to a member of the team who may be able to answer that.
Yeah, and I'll
Yes.
lean if somebody else wants to jump in, but a lot of this will be tied to the signature program as well. So some of the STEM characteristics and IB characteristics are where this was pulled from, and a lot of that is in either the critical thinker, skilled problem solver one, or the self-reflective, globally connected one. But I don't know if anyone else wants to kind of jump in on top, but on the alignment between the century skills and the standards. But I think you make a good point, Akeem, and that's part of the purpose of one of the good and bad things about all the measures. We have all these measures, but the good thing is it can paint a picture like this on one of the elements that kind of brings to light some of the differences and discrepancies.
No worries. And I mean, we're just brainstorming. I appreciate
that's the point.
collaboration. I'm not trying to come down on anyone. It's just like, I really believe that Atlanta is the place to have the best graduates, and we can compete nationally amongst our peers, and we will. We just got to have a system reset and make sure we hound down on the essential skills and reading, literacy, and numeracy pieces.
Got it. Ms. Sherrill, do you mind if we jump through the next two real quick, and then we can close up this
go
section
ahead.
with you?
Go ahead.
Thanks. All right. Monique, you want to do the next two, and then we'll pause before Dr. Freeman's part?
Absolutely. So the next session we have is around resourceful and driven. So again, left side, you can kind of see how we're defining that as a district. Over on the right side, you can see the 5 areas that we're looking at. And so we receive a lot of this data from our partnership with Achieve Atlanta, as well as, again, Georgia Student Health Survey and our senior exit survey. So for the class of 2023, 92% of our students had completed and submitted at least one college application, which is up 6 percentage points from the previous year. 70.3% of our students completed their FAFSA application, which was up 3.9 percentage points from the previous year. 79.4% of our seniors said that they felt prepared to overcome obstacles on the senior exit survey, which again was up. 88% of our students responded that they know a student at their school that they can talk to. So that's that perceived support from peers. And then 80% of our students said that they know an adult at school that they can talk to for help. So again, perceived support from adults. So overall, 81.7% of, we had an average score, of 81.7%. which is up 2.4 percentage points from 2022. And then our last area was critical thinker and skilled problem solver. So again, on the left side, you can see how we're defining that as a district. On the right side, you can see the 4 areas that we are using to measure that. And so again, this is from our senior exit survey, as well as just student course records. So the first one is that 80% or 80.1% of our students perceive themselves as being able to solve problems, that their high school prepared them well to solve problems. 80.8% of our seniors said that they felt that their high school prepared them to be a critical thinker. 87.1% of our seniors earned at least 4 science credits. So they enrolled and passed in at least 4 science credits in high school. And then 35.5% of our students enrolled and achieved a passing grade in at least 2 IB courses or 2 AP, which is advanced placement courses, or earned 1 dual enrollment course credit. And so again, that is up a little bit from last year. I'll also drop in the chat, just due to some of the interest, our college enrollment brief from last year, since that data is available for anyone that is interested in looking at just how students matriculated into college from 2022 through 2023.
Awesome. Thanks, Monique. Ms. Sherrill, did you have a question that we can capture?
Well, I was listening. I'm glad you went through the next 2 slides, because what Hakeem brought up earlier does concern me. It appears that students are taking courses, and seems to be struggling with the transition piece of acquiring knowledge and being able to apply it. So the practical applications of what they've learned. And I'm looking at it based on the fact that we were talking about we see that 80.1% said they are prepared to solve problems, but it's down from last year, which kind of concerns me based on the fact that those students were in online courses based on the pandemic. So that's really concerning to me and kind of telling. And so what I really want to know is, you mentioned that you're going to drop something in the chat, which is going to be helpful, because you really could track progress, because you're talking about the students that matriculate into college. So it would give you actually a report of how well children are maintaining and retaining information that they learned in high school, and whether or not they're prepared for college. But I want to know, does your data show not only them matriculating into college, but do you show if they stayed that first year? Because I know with the students with disability, they do have to report that to the state, whether or not they've gone into college or, into employment, and where they are right now. So that is reported. So do you follow them at least a year, out of high school?
Absolutely. And so the link that is in the chat, it's about I think about a 12 or 13 page report that you can kind of look at your leisure. But we do look and see, do students seamlessly enroll in college after high school? So again, they graduate, and sometime in the fall, do they enroll in college? And then we track them to see if they continue and persist through college. And so we track them to be able to see, do they graduate within 6 years after the time that they've graduated and enrolled in college? And so you can find that information it's actually on page 9 of the report for the link that's in the chat.
Thanks for that. Hakeem, did you have a question, or did I forget to lower your hand?
I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay, no, my bad.
I have a question, Travis. Are you talking about the student with disability population on page 9? Is that them?
I'm sorry, it's just all students on page 9. So page 9 will show you in the report all students on whether they've enrolled in college, and then each year were they persistent to the next year. I'm trying to see if this report actually, I don't know if this one calls out special ed students exactly.
Right, because that's what I was going to ask. Is it because I know their caseworker may follow up. My son did get a follow-up, a last meeting and a follow-up maybe a month later, but I know we didn't get anything after that once he graduated. So I'm curious to see the data and see how many of our children are enrolling in college or at least graduating with maybe associates, maybe not a 4-year, but maybe go to Atlanta Tech or something like that. Do y'all have that specific data to show? And if that data is there or not, could we make it a priority to get those babies into trade school and kind of, at least for that year, at least monitor them, make sure that things in their IEP, because it can follow them to college, some kind of way make sure that that is being taken care of, because I think the overall reason why we're asking this question, because the community are seeing so many children with special needs. They graduate, they say they've earned all their, high school credits, but then it's not much for them to do after college. And we know that they have a lot to give to the world, to society. We just got to make sure 9 through 12 we're homing in on those great skills that they have, because regardless, I know they have something, and how we can help them lift that up and put them in a space where they're, I'm gonna say it, earning a livable wage. So I just want to lift it up.
And I appreciate that. And so one of the things that we can do as we get this year's college enrollment data, so I should be receiving that data sometime in late January, and we get ready to produce the 2023 version of this report, we can add the special education subgroup in there. Right now, we just look at college enrollment by gender and by race ethnicity. So I appreciate you lifting the fact that we have not acknowledged our special ed students that enroll in college. And that's definitely something that we can add in this year's version of the report.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Thanks. All right, and so before passing it to Dr. Freeman, because I want to make sure I capture some of the career pathways questions that we've been hearing. This is a great conversation we just had, because as we talk about what to do with these measures, my first thought is a lot of the questions were after they leave us, which is a much more difficult thing to capture, data to capture, but almost each one of these led to, so then what, right? So they passed or didn't pass, or scored or didn't score, and then what? And so I think it's just an interesting conversation that will help with our board retreat as well. So with that, I want to pass it to Dr. Freeman, if you don't mind giving kind of a high level of the career pathways process and how everything exciting about career pathways.
Well, thank you, Travis. Good afternoon, everybody. When we're talking about any reference to career pathways, we're specifically referencing those that come from the Career Technical and Agricultural Education Department, and we affectionately call that CTAE because that's a tongue twister. But it's very much the traditional CTE programs that are known nationwide. Here in Georgia, we add the A and we call it CTAE. So it's the same type of program and department that you would find in every state. So essentially, the pathways are a series of 3 courses. So you can take CTAE courses. Once you take 2, you're considered a concentrator in that industry or in that cluster. And then once you take the 3rd, that's when you become a completer in that pathway. So the pathways are a series of 3 courses. They are focused on technical skills for students that are in pursuit of high demand, high skill, or high wage occupations. Those 3, CTAE is federally funded. And so our focus is always to be focused on what is available and what is of need in our communities, those that lead to high demand, high skilled, and high wage occupations, and subsequently majors, right? That is the focus of our programs. So we prepare students for a wide range of careers that require different levels of education. So I'll stop here because that's a big myth about CTAE. that it is only one thing, and it's not. It's very much college and career ready focus. We have several engineering programs, but we don't want any engineers that come straight out of high school and become engineers. There's definitely post-secondary education required, but those courses are excellent for students that want to major in engineering because they have a very much more higher competency for engineering concepts than when they enter college than students that did not take the program in high school. On the other side, we do have some pathways that could take you directly to work. Our programs like HVAC and automotive, culinary arts is another example. So the gamut of programs that we offer really just does run a wide range of whether they're preparing you for college or career. CTAE is funded for 6 through 12. So on our middle school, our focus in those programs is for career awareness and career exploration. They are not really at the point of mastering skills. They are just becoming aware of the possibilities and exploring, kind of getting their feet wet about what the possibilities are in the industries. When they move on to high school, that's where we focus more on career development, competency mastery, and employability skills. CTAE is very much a program. So in addition to the courses that are offered, we do offer credentials of value. It's a state initiative nationwide, really, where every pathway has either a industry recognized credential or a competency assessment associated with it that the students take at the end of a series of 3 classes. So it's kind of like a milestone test where it is going over your mastery of the skills, but you take it at the end of a series of 3 classes instead of just 1. So that's our credentials of value, and that's what you saw kind of referenced in the profile of a graduate data that was shown. Work-based learning is our program where the students get to leave campus early to explore the CTAE pathway that they studied and still receive course credit, elective credit for it. And then our co-curricular student organizations they're not extracurricular, they are embedded into the CTAE courses, and the focus is for students to compete in the areas that they are learning. So if you're familiar with FBLA or DECA, FCCLA, Skills USA, all of those are considered co-curricular student organizations, and they're aligned to CTAE pathways. So some fast facts about CTAE: we offer 60 across APS for high school and 17 in our middle schools. We had a very strategic initiative this year to make sure that there was better alignment with the programs that are offered at the middle school and how they progress to what is actually offered at the high schools. So there is at least one pathway that is directly aligned from middle to high school in all of the traditional programs. We've had 29 students that were in CTAE to advance on to governor's honors. So again, it is not, it's a holistic program in that we are preparing for college and career. In the past 5 years, over 50 of the APS valedictorians, salutatorians, or STAR students were also CTAE students. We offer 14 of the 16 national career cluster areas. There's 16 recognized nationwide APS. We offer at least one pathway in 14 of those. And then for those CTSOs, or the co-curricular student organizations that I mentioned, 30 students at least are advancing to national or international competition each year. Last year we had 55 to go in one summer. So we're very proud of the opportunities and the access that the students have to different pathways. We realize that a lot of it is it can be very different, right? Because we are not like magnets, and there's not selection for the school that you go to that has the pathway that you're interested in. ACCA is where we kind of have some of that flexibility for you to have access to more than what is at your high school. But we do feel like we do a pretty good job of exposing the students to something with the intent also that ACCA becomes an option as they become upperclassmen. So more information, specifically the career planner, I hope that you'll take a moment to look at on our website, atlantapublicschools.us/CTAE. There is a career planner. The current one is for the FY22 school year because we have a lot of pathways that get to grow and morph because we're always trying to focus on the high demand, high skilled, and high wage. And so the state allows us the flexibility to be able to shift pathways in the direction that meets the needs of our community. And if we'll advance the slide, it just gives you an idea of what the pathways are that exist at our traditional middle schools. These are the 17 that we mentioned. And then the following slide is the pathways at our high schools.
Thanks, Dr. Freeman. I also put, so I put your website in the chat and then also put the link to this presentation so you can find this in case it went too fast to track down your school. And what, thanks. So thanks for the elevator spiel on CTAE as quick as you can.
Yes, it's possible.
Let's go with Akeem and then Waikisha on any CTAE questions you may have.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for all the work you do with CTAE first. And so when I look at the CTAE list, there's a lot of programs. However, it's like when we look at schools that are not performing at best, we see that they have lower CTAE available courses. Is there a plan to booster that up? Like for example, Best in Coretta, they only have 100 students, especially as they manipulate from middle school to high school. I feel like that should be one of our strongest programs with CTAE because they're right next door to each other. The middle school, then they just go across the hall to the high school. And there are only single gender schools. Like we got to build the programming around the community because that is one of the hardest hit communities. They need agriculture over on 30318 because their zip code is split in half with their life expectancy. And the thing is, the students could solve those problems because they're going through it firsthand and they're also being able to get their education behind it firsthand. Like it really lead to something big, I believe. But then you look at schools like Midtown. Midtown has 7 CTAE, but they also have foundations. So I don't know if it's a money thing or if it's like put out that way specifically, but I feel like we got to make sure it's balanced because the student that's already having half the life expectancy of someone that's in the Midtown cluster should at least have the educational opportunities to combat that and to get out of poverty.
I appreciate your comment. I think two things I'd like to point out that agricultural leadership, the horticulture is a new pathway in ag that's at Washington High School, and then veterinary science, in addition to all of their STEM initiatives where they have, quite a bit of ag related things is available at CSK. And so that is one of the more recent shifts since COVID that we've made to kind of be in line with some other initiatives in those communities. And then to the point about, I guess collectively, right, as a district, CTAE is just one of many other opportunities that the students have access to at their school. So while you have CTAE pathways, there's also arts, there's also dual enrollment, there's also, some other things that the schools have to be very strategic about what pathways and what opportunities meet the needs of the students. And then if I'm being perfectly honest, sometimes we are literally just confined by space. Some of our schools are landlocked, they're at capacity, there's specific requirements that are needed for some of our programs, think like automotive or carpentry. What it takes to make a program like that is far beyond just a classroom available. And so sometimes even when we identify the place for it, it is much more of a heavy lift to make it a reality at that location than just a desire for it to be there. So just some context that we totally grapple with quite often that just make it limited. And that's why I feel, again, so fortunate to have ACCA to kind of fill the gaps in some of those opportunities because the students can still get access to some of those bigger need type pathways.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Freeman. Ms. Hall?
I have one follow-up, Travis.
Oh, sorry. Can I jump to Ms. Hall and come back to you?
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
Oh, no, he can go ahead, Travis. Let him go.
All right.
Ms. Freeman?
Yes.
my follow-up to that would be ACCA. It's just my belief, and this is just my personal opinion, is not a solution for the district of the magnitude of Atlanta Public Schools. Because when we're busing students from farther away, like that school is right off 20 and 75. But when you're busing students from far away, like even in the morning times, we're having issues with buses getting students to schools because of traffic. So by the time they get to ACCA, they're not getting their full spectrum of work done. And then I don't know if it's changed, but I had one of my friends enrolled her son into the ACCA, the culinary program. He was accepted for the first semester. However, for the second semester, he had to reapply, and he didn't get accepted the second semester. So then it was almost like he got a half a credit of the ACCA, but now he got to go back to the regular school, and now he got to join an arts program or something. It's almost like, how do we make sure that if a student is going for culinary, that they're getting the adequate exposure rather than just saying, hey, I checked the box because this student was there.
Absolutely. That is the first time that I've heard anything like that. If you get the opportunity, if we can reach out and talk through that and what that exact experience was like, I'm very, very interested in it. The program is new. It's new for everyone. I think our current 8th graders are going to get all the best of what ACCA has to offer, because we are annually working out the kinks that we've learned since we opened the year of COVID. But just the access point and the planning that it takes, like going into high school, knowing that I eventually want to go to ACCA, makes the experience even better, right? Because you know that that's something that you want to do, you know that it exists, and you can make decisions on the front end, very much like what our students do when they're going into our advanced academics programs. I know eventually I want to do dual enrollment, so there's things I need to take on the front end to make that a possibility, or other pathways that complement and things like that. So it's getting better every year, but I think hearing feedback like that makes us even better able to accommodate the needs of our students. So thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks. Ms. Howe?
Yes. I had a suggestion. I see these really cool videos, and they could be like further out in Georgia, where they have, once again, the kids with special needs. They have them working in the kitchen and doing all those really cool little things. They have somebody to supervise them. It maybe be like 3 or 4 of them. They're learning how to cut. They're learning how to cook. I seen someone, I think it was on like Good Day Atlanta, not Atlanta, but America, where they were saying how this person learned with special needs. They learn how to bake these cookies and all that. Just the idea, since we're in this space, have we had that luxury of doing that here, or is that something that could be possibly planned? Because I know, like, my children always talk about cooking, and so I think that would be a great pathway if they choose. And culinary art, I know we have that at the Washington Club, so whoop, whoop. But I'm not sure if it's everywhere else, and I know they probably have did videos and stuff before, but maybe if we can lift that up, that could be a beautiful highlight. And we can kind of, because let's be clear, you know, those cooks and stuff like that get paid. That can be a very great opportunity for our kids to do something different. I'm just saying that because, you know, we see them working in a grocery store and stuff like that, and that's cool, but let's give them an opportunity to do something else, be creative, and just earn a little bit more money. So I just wanted to give you that one.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think we can always do a better job communicating some of the isolated pockets of what I would like to believe are excellence, and opportunities, like our groups of CTI students that are special ed CTAE students that work at like the Marriott and at certain businesses that's kind of coordinated through that group. And so they do some type of in-house things, but they are traveling and doing great things as well. And so I think just promoting and finding ways to highlight those students in those programs is absolutely an area of improvement. So thank you.
And communication can help with that. too.
Mhm.
So I think that's the way. And then we can start, like, say for the Washington cluster, for example, we know we need babies in seat. So that can be a pulling point. Well, that can be an advertising point where you can pull people in and be like, oh, I got this great kid, like to cook. We can go over to Washington because they have this pathway, and we have an awesome chef over there who's really taking his time and working with these babies to get them to the next level. So let's work on that.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's go to Ms. Odom, and then I'll read out the kind of questions and comments from the chat from Ms. Rel. Ms. Odom.
Hi, good afternoon. Quick question. Have we ever thought about a rolling schedule for ACCA? I know the students go based on morning and afternoon by their high school, but if it was either or, because sometimes it's a time constraint with the scheduling in each high school, so a lot of students cannot go because if they're doing their classes are only offered in the morning, they cannot do ACCA because the ACCA might be doing the afternoon for them and they need to go in the morning. Has that ever been looked at, or is that feasible?
It is feasible, possibly from a scheduling perspective. The challenge is being able to guarantee the same types of supports for the students that elect that, right? So if you have the ability to transport on your own, then that's a possibility for you. But if you don't, then it isn't. And so that's what we grappled with early on about kind of keeping strict to the different resources that APS provided, being consistent for every student that wanted access. But I can't say it's off the table going forward, because through that model, we leave seats available if every seat isn't taken by the identified morning or afternoon students. So I honestly don't think it's on the table for like 24, but going forward, there is conversation about how we can fill every single seat and making it available for any student that has interest.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
You are welcome.
Thanks, Dr. Freeman. Just to kind of wrap up our time, because I know we're going over, Mr. Al called out encouraging participation in middle school in preparation for high school. I know you kind of captured some of the connection between middle and high school, and then also, which we touched on, particularly when you talked about the communication and highlighting, but basically the support for students with disabilities population to take advantage of these programs to obtain certification and completion of a pathway.
Absolutely. So the CTSOs are statewide programs, and when you have a program, you have to charter it and pay the charter application and kind of start the process. So because we expanded to more middle school pathways, we used this year to charter the organizations and kind of start the foundation. So next year, I think you'll see many more communications about those programs being offered in the middle schools. And the SWD population is not excluded from the traditional ones like FBLA, Skills USA, all of those. But career and technical instruction, CTI, just like we have that program and there's a CTI coordinator, there's actually a CTSO called CTI, and it is specifically for special students with disabilities that are in CTAE classes. So they get to compete, they do leadership competitions, they do everything with students that still have that same identification. And we have that program in every one of our high schools. It even expanded to Drew this year as well. So we are making the steps in that direction, and certainly expanding as the months go by and just what the students have access to. And I think I'm going to take a moment from Ms. Howe, from her note about just communicating these things, because while they're existing, I realize from every one of these comments that we're just not doing a good enough job making you aware that they are happening. So that's my personal target and goal for next school year.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Thank you, Monique, and others who joined this conversation. Kind of a couple highlights and themes to kind of wrap up that, taking with us a lot of questions on ACCA. So whether there's a future conversation diving just deeper into ACCA sounds helpful. Special education always is kind of a focus and priority. And that's a reminder for those who join late 5:30 tonight. Dr. Battle will be meeting with special education parents. So you can kind of dive deeper into that. as well. And then I think we got a lot of good feedback on the data and what the data is showing us in preparation for our board retreat, whenever that happens, to talk about particularly this goal. And so we appreciate everybody's time today. Some reminders, there's some surveys out there. I think today's the last day for the superintendent search. And then I know Tom is on here to make sure I say that the student calendar survey is open until Friday. I'm on here about the family engagement one. Those all end on Friday, and they all play extremely critical roles in our decision-making and things that impact kids. So pay attention to that. Tonight is also, I believe, Carver Cluster Advisory Team meeting is tonight. And Ishay Collins community meeting, I believe, is at 7 and it's virtual. So if you're looking for something to do, there are always opportunities to listen and share. So with that, thanks everybody for your help today and for getting this information. And this is being recorded, so we'll be sharing it out as well. Y'all have a great holiday.
Thank you. Good afternoon.